The question you asked was, when you create a menu, do you think of recipes in terms of high-level chunks of work or a series of independent small steps? And the example you used was like, we need to roast potatoes, as opposed to the small steps being preheat oven, lay out potatoes, like seasoned potatoes, cook potatoes. I absolutely do small steps because it creates momentum, the feeling of like you're crossing things off of the list over and over and over again, which feels like progress, even though maybe sometimes it's not. But it also, it's very easy for, you can't make things, it's like a Russian nesting doll, right? Like if you have a nesting doll, like if you make everything the same size, it's very easy to see like, oh, this isn't so bad. But if you like pop open every single nesting doll and there's all these different steps that go into it, and then you look at a table of individually sized nesting dolls, it's like, whoa, this is a lot of stuff. And sometimes there's projects where it's like dehydrate tarragon for tarragon powder or something like that. And the only thing you need to do today, because it's for tomorrow, is to dehydrate the tarragon. You pop open that nesting doll and there's nothing inside because it's like, that was a quick, easy project. But then it's like roasting potatoes. Saying roast potatoes, like sometimes also you're gonna get to a point where you don't have to write the word seasoned potatoes on your prep list anymore, because it's automatically linked to when I lay out the potatoes, I sprinkle salt and oregano on them. You know what I mean? But in the beginning, you absolutely have to do that because, again, going back to the systems, it's like sometimes, chef will tell you, in the lamb sauce today, I really want to put star anise in the lamb stock. And whether it's your first time doing it or you've done it a million times, it's not going to click with you the first time you start.
Right.
And that's what the next question. But I keep wanting to bring these things up, but absolutely break them up into small steps, because it's a system that prevents things from getting forgotten about, and it also makes it so that you really have a bird's eye view of these are all the things that are left to do. And some of the only times when I can recall myself not executing were times when I was not organized enough to see this is a lot of stuff, and I just wrote down butcher fish on my prep list when in reality it's 20 kilos of cod, and I have to break it down off the bone, and then I have to skin it, and then I have to salt it, and then I have to rinse that salt off of it, and then if you just write this small little thing and treat it as a little small thing, it's not going to be like that. But that's my prep list philosophy, and that's how I find myself able to be insanely effective and productive in prep, is that the first 2 to 4 hours of like an 8-hour workday, you're constantly doing between 3 and 5 things. And
at the same kind of
concurrently. And what ends up happening is that somebody asked me that in a comment the other day. They're like, if you did this and this and this, you could have 9 things happening at the same time. And I'm like, it maxes out, right? Like it gets to a point where it plateaus, and it's like just by starting more things, it becomes your beets are now getting overcooked because you're frying potato chips, and your chicken is, like you can only have a certain, I've found 3 to 5 things happening at a time. And that just comes from seeing all of those individual little steps and being able to prioritize, like, this needs to get done first, this needs to come next, this needs to come next. And I've honestly found that it's not a realistic list if after 2 to 4 hours of doing 3 to 5 multitasking projects, you're still in the shits. If it's more than that, like, you have too much on your plate. Like, that's just how it is. Getting to that point, that is what takes time. But I've personally found that, like, once you get there, it's a real unlock. And if you can have a room of between 2 to 10 people doing that, I struggle to think that there would be a restaurant that could not function at a very high level with that amount. And again, I mean, that's why places like 108 and Noma can do these intricate plate ups, because I mean, it's just, you're just adding busy work at that point. There's, I don't know. So I hope that answered the question.
It does. Yeah, I have kind of a follow-up. So there are kind of a lot of what you said resonated with me. Actually, in particular, like I think about recipes that you'll find like in a cookbook or online or something. It'll often be kind of a list of things and then, oh, by the way, add this sauce. That's in a different recipe. It takes 2 hours to make.
Yep.
But there are kind of two pieces that were sort of cognitively a little bit in tension to me. I'm wondering how you deal with it, or maybe this is kind of the wrong concern. So on the one hand, kind of thinking of, you were saying visually, the way that you look at your calendar is sort of slotting in sort of different color-coded things. So in some sense, kind of, like switching to something else when like you have to wait for something, that sort of thing. And on the other hand, thinking in terms of very specific sort of fine-grained tasks. And I wonder if, so obviously like things sort of depend on each other, right? You can't necessarily, like roast the potatoes before you've seasoned them, something like that. Are those kind of dependencies something that you just sort of have in your head because of course you have experience and you've done these elements before? Or is that something that you think about explicitly in terms of how to order things and like when can I swap things out versus when do I really need to deal with like this thing right now? Okay, so if I give you like a big list of like a huge prep list of all the sort of specific tasks that need to be done in without any sort of ordering, then somehow you're gonna have to figure out like which things need to be done in what sort of order, and also like maybe which things kind of need to be done close together. Because whatever, like the thing can't just like be sitting there on the counter for 2 hours cooling down while I'm like cutting onions or whatever. And so are those kind of dependencies between the tasks?
I understand. So what I will do is like I'll go through so if I have a big list, I wonder if I actually have a list that I can bring up. Maybe not. That's fine. So I will go through a list, right? So if roast beets is on a prep list, and going back to that other thing, like roasting veal bones for sauce is also on that list. So if I'm looking through the list and I see roast beets, pick cilantro, potato puree, butcher fish, and then all of a sudden I see veal bones again, beets is already something that I've said, okay, that's going to take like 2 to 3 hours to roast. Pop it up on that's a number one priority because it's something that can work in the background while I'm doing something else. It's going to take a lot of time. I see like, oh, veal bones, that's also going to take a lot of time. But the cost to include that with the beets is like an extra 5 minutes of pulling out that tray and popping it into the oven. So wedge it in with something else. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I could wait until the oven's free and then put the veal bones in by themselves. But if the beets have to roast at 375 and the veal has to roast at 450, can I put them both in the oven at the same time at 450 when the veal bones are done? I can cool the oven down. Probably. Like the beets are probably going to be okay at 450 wrapped in foil. They're just going to get hot. They're not going to completely turn to a crisp. Very, very important. And then when I'm thinking about that next project, that's when I start to think,